America's podcast guest, Michael Phillips. I don't know why, I like that line for you because that is what you are.
I'm the only person in America that doesn't have his own podcast. And if I ever got one, the whole system would break down. There would be no guests available for the other ones.
It would definitely break down because then, I don't know what we do, So a lot of people would be lost.
I'm always happy to be in the John Keim Network. Stephen Wino hasn't invited me on to talk Caps yet. So you gotta talk. I'm trying to touch all the bases in the Empire Network, but I'm getting snubbed here.
Well, I was at a Caps game the other night, and I haven't been invited on either. But
both of us have attended Capitals games and not been invited on. Snubbed, I say.
Yeah, I can talk about look at that ice, it's gleaming. So there's my insight.
That's a fun game to go to.
It's an awesome game to go to. And it's funny because, and I do enjoy going there, but when you go there, it's so different than any other sport, baseball, basketball, especially. And then when you're going to FedEx, it's a little bit different atmosphere too. Used to be like that. And, but it's not now. We'll get into all that in a minute.
We'll get into that.
There you go. Well, let's start with the name because this week the name is finally going to be announced. What's your pick?
There's so much smoke around Commanders. It's really tough to ignore that. But I think that whatever it is, people will be relieved that the process is over, and we begin the process of accepting and embracing the new name, which is not an overnight thing. That's going to take time, but if you talk about moving on from Redskins, it will be easier to do once there is a new name other than the placeholder football team, because it'll give us something to say, something to put our flag on, something to embrace. So I think that the next stage of the journey begins, and we're all ready for that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, and I do think it'll be Commanders, and I feel pretty good on that one. So, but I think that's where it'll go. And so, but it's weird because then it's like you are forging a new identity. And one thing that they've consistently said is we don't want to be seen as an expansion franchise. And they're not. But is there a way to avoid, that's such a big change that I would think it's hard not to be viewed that way by some, even though you're not.
Well, I think keeping the color scheme is a great nod, and we'll see what they do in terms of traditions and the band and all those things that people associate with the Washington football experience historically. That they've always been very good about having alumni at the games and paying tribute to the past. And I'm a big believer. You keep showing that '91 film, you keep showing that Doug Williams film. That stuff that happened that exists, and you keep showing that film and reminding people of the history. So I think for the fans, it's seamless. I think for the outside markets, if you're just living in Denver and you're a Broncos fan, it probably feels new and novel and maybe a little more expansiony. But I think inside the market, it's still the same people, the same stuff. And I think they'll keep a lot of the traditions and things that people enjoy about going to games.
I hope they do keep those traditions. And, I know some people are kind of already bemoaned the fact that the song is different. You don't have, you're not going to have the HTTR moniker anymore, which is a big deal. So I guess HTTC, I don't know,
and a lot of the stuff will have to be new and earned through repetition and even created spontaneously by the fans. I was at the XFL team where they made the beer cup snake, and that was their thing. Stuff happens spontaneously, and
maybe
stuff will happen.
We could do that in the press box.
With all Nikki's coffees, just stack her the Starbucks snake.
that would be a long snake too. But and you're right. And to me, a big key in this will be always how the alumni take to it and how they treat the alumni to remind people this is still the heritage here. This franchise is still the one that you guys saw in 91, 87, whatever. Because, in all honesty too, those days are gone anyway, right? I mean, they're so different now anyways from then that everything evolves or changes.
Yeah, and look, it's the lamest take to offer here, but it's true. They just got to win. You know what?
Right.
People love winners. People get behind winners. Like, there's some goofy named teams that win a lot of games, and people love them and people embrace it. I mean, you think about for 4 weeks we were talking about these grown men throwing a rock at a wall to celebrate winning. Like that was the goofiest thing that happened all year. And everybody's on board with it because they're either beating Tom Brady or beating Russell Wilson. Let's throw the dang rock.
And you know what? Like you had more people listening to podcasts, listening to radio during that time because that's what they want to see as somebody win finally. And that's a thing too, that, there are a lot of fans and I don't blame them if they say, I'm done with this franchise. I get it. I've covered all this stuff under Dan Snyder for 2 decades. I know why they would be frustrated. The one thing that this team hasn't done is tested the belief that they would never come back, because the only way you test that is by winning and generating excitement. I think that's the one thing when I look back, all the 91 Super Bowl stuff, which was fun to go relive for people, I'm sure. And I had people on here and other radio show in town had people, but it was such a fun period for this fan base, obviously, because they were winning, but also the excitement around it. And they haven't had that in decades, whether they were called the Redskins or football team or whatever. They haven't had that. The last time was probably when Robert was here. So the only way you can recapture that is by generating that level of excitement. And it's like that was real, and it can happen again if you win.
It can always happen again. Kansas City Royals. I grew up in Kansas. My dad, just monster Royals fan, and it just never resonated for me. I mean, they stunk my entire childhood, and we would go up there to watch Nolan Ryan come to town with the Rangers, to watch all these other guys. But they made the World Series a few years ago. I got into it. I flew back. We went to the game. It was a great time. It's always one step away, and then the step is winning.
And that step is quarterback too. If they can get, if they had pretty good quarterback play the last 2 years, they're back-to-back playoff seasons probably.
Yeah. So
possibly. This year I don't want to assume that but there could have been a couple games where you sneak out because Denver or maybe Green Bay or the Chargers or whatever. One of those, if you get 2 of those games, on the other hand, they're a fluky offsides away from losing the game to the Giants, and they're crazy finish against the Falcons. So
here, I'll put 2 on the board right away. They beat the Saints and they beat the Broncos with good
definitely beat the Broncos. Yeah. And maybe the Packers.
Those games are done deals. I think they have a chance against the Packers. I think the late season thing shakes out a little bit differently. You probably get 1 against the Eagles for sure. It's not a stretch to suggest that the quarterback position cost them 4 wins this year over what it could have been.
Yeah, and which is why I think they'll be obviously very aggressive. Do you have a leader? And I know nobody knows what the heck's going to happen because we don't even know who's going to be available until all these coaching vacancies are filled. You don't know who's going to be available, but do you have a gut feel? Do you have a just because this is all right now a gut feel or just an opinion more than anything else?
Yeah, sure. So I think you've got a big 4 going on. So obviously Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and I'm going to put David Carr in the big 4 camp. I think those are the 4 guys that if you land them, people get juiced, people get excited, people say, wow, there's an elite quarterback leading the Washington football team. And I'm aware some people want to debate me on Carr, whatever. Those are my 4.
They'll debate you on David Carr, not Derek Carr.
Thank you. Yes.
You're still right. Some would too, even with him.
I think they will chase the big 4 and they want to land one of the big 4. But who else wants to land one of the big 4, Kyle? Everybody wants
needs
one of
a
those
quarterback.
Guys. It's professional football. Everybody wants one of those guys. So I don't know that it's a given. So now you're looking at your plan B. And I think your plan B, instead of trying to tape it up with a Trubisky or a Mariota or somebody, I think your plan B is to go rookie. I think that's just so much more palatable to the fans. Malik Willis is a name I think has a lot of buzz behind him with good reason, but he's a developmental guy. He's a year away from being where you'd want him to be. Everybody sees that. So I think if you don't land one of the big 4, you're in for a potentially rough season, no matter how it ends up. But I do think it's more palatable with a rookie because you can get excited along the way.
You can. I think it also, as you know, clearly Ron Rivera was like, "Are you guys going to be patient with me?" So with Willis would require a lot of patience, and
Yep.
you know, I think you'd have to have a placeholder along the way. So do you go out and get a Trubisky to be that? Because to me, if you get Trubisky, he's a placeholder. You know, you're not getting him to be long term. You're going to get him, and even if they went out and got Garoppolo, I'm still drafting a guy.
You know what kills me about Garoppolo is he's literally on the road to being Kirk Cousins 2.0, really enhanced by the Shanahan offense, probably going to be paid way too much. Not sure he can do it with the game on the line, and he's got to carry the team. I mean, that's just Kirk Cousins all over again. If you can get him on a reasonable contract, sure, but somebody's going to overpay that dude, and they are going to regret it.
Well, the one I think for the people, for anybody, and first of all, he's an upgrade over what they have. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. But for those who, if that's what somebody's solution is, the good news for them is that he hasn't played that great in the postseason, so the stock is kind of going down. But of course, that's that's not what you want. But I do think I think he has some good qualities as a quarterback, and I think he has some limitations or some issues, and some of the picks and all that he's thrown. And sometimes you're like, what the hell were you looking at? And he's got that quick twitch, which I think gets him to bail out of situations and gets him into bad spots as well, because he kind of relies on that. But, I still think if you get him, you're going to look for a guy maybe after the first round that you can say, okay, we got Garoppolo. We'll take, a Des Ridder, Carson Strong in round 2 or 3, and maybe develop that way. Or maybe you push it off another year, because at least with this guy, you feel like you could get to 10 wins. And maybe in a best case scenario for them, he becomes the equivalent of Alex Smith going to the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't,
yeah. And, I think it's a window that's open. I think the Cowboys are a super team, but I think as we've seen that there's so much combustibility there that I don't know. Like if I watched the Denver Broncos try to push their chips to the middle every year. And I just think I think I'd wait a couple of years, wait for this Mahomes thing to die down, wait for the salary cap will catch up to them eventually. Herbert's the same. He's still on his rookie deal. There are certain teams where I think it's wise to wait and not push the chips in. This conference is so wide open. I'm going for it if I can.
Well, and also the division, because, I think Dak, there's a lot of things I like about Dak, but where does he stack up in the echelon of quarterbacks? Is he consistently a top 10 guy? I'm not sure about that, but I do like him. And sometimes
that's where we come back to value. I mean, Dak is getting paid more than he brings. So would you like to have Dak on your team? Yeah, of course, he's great. But do you like Dak at that salary? I think that's a tough question to answer.
It is. Well, listen, it's the same question that these guys had when Kirk Cousins was here. Did they want him back? Yes. Did they want him at 30? No. And I don't blame him. I always felt like he was to me, the ceiling that I would have paid him at that time is 23 or 24, but the market dictated he could go get what he got. And so if you get him, can you build? And if Rivera's goal is to build, like a guy's desires to build, then you can't pay a certain amount for a guy who's not a top level quarterback. So
yeah, and obviously this conversation does not carry over to Wilson, Rodgers, Watson. You pay them whatever you need to pay them. Right. As we saw with Mahomes, there are certain people that just are worth the number that you put down on paper. That's still a worthwhile investment.
So if Wilson came here, we might get more than 1,000 or 2 at training camp practices.
Especially if you come down to Richmond. That's the old stomping grounds.
There you go. So let's get to the stadium, because you just wrote a story on this for the Richmond Times-Dispatch you had analyzing each locale, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and where you think based on your reporting and talking to people over the time. And, it's not a topic that I've devoted enough attention to yet. I have talked to some people. I know, clearly some people in Virginia over the years. I know, there's a lot, you've been deeply involved in this. So right now, and I think you even put your top 6 list out there. Where do you have the favorite right now?
I think the favorite is Loudoun, the Dulles Loudoun corridor sites. I think Virginia senses it has a lot of momentum at this moment. It's got a government that is ready to push this thing through. The new governor's for it. The legislature is for it. It's got the advantage of the other 2 localities kind of being, little wishy-washy. I think they're determined to press their advantage as much as possible right now. And one of the things, Terry McAuliffe, if you remember, I mean, goodness, was that 5-6 years ago? He was openly courting them. They weren't ready to play ball just yet. They were still waiting to see, can we get into RFK? Can we get a deal elsewhere? I think this is McAuliffe 2.0, but the difference is they sense this is their moment, and they're really pressing hard. Let's get this thing. I go back to that. The Washington Post had that story back in December about the legislature, really moving, trying to get things done. And you always look at, where's the story coming from? That story was coming from the Virginia government side, not from the team side. And I think the Virginia government wants to really juice up. Hey, we want to make this happen, and we want to get it done right now. We don't want to wait around.
So if it's Virginia, so you have Loudoun, the Dulles, and you even had I think your third was a mystery Virginia site. I'm assuming that would be Prince William County, or do you look at Tyson's as a possibility?
When sports betting was legalized in Virginia, FanDuel partnered with the Washington football team, and they launched a sports betting thing around that partnership. And in our reporting then at the Times Dispatch, one of the things we quoted was a senator said to us that they have a location, a plot of land picked out that they think they can get closer to the Beltway and closer to the action. So now that's obviously preferable for everybody. Everybody wants, closer to the Beltway, closer to the city, closer to the metro area. Your issue is Virginia, the state, going to play ball to the same extent as they are in Loudoun? I think Virginia views this as, hey, we'll give you the money, we'll give you the $1 billion. You building in Loudoun, we're gonna make another mega city out here around this Dulles corridor. You Reston, Sterling, Herndon. We're gonna really build this area up, juice it up, make it the new center of power in the area. Do they get that bump inside the Beltway? Do they get that bump in a Fairfax County location? I think the answer is no. Those are already very desirable places to live. You think about Nationals Park, MCI Center, whatever they call that now. Those were built deliberately in neighborhoods to juice up development in those neighborhoods. And the closer you get to the city, the less of that you get on the Virginia side.
And then, for that, like, you go back to the gambling. And I think we talked before, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the theory would be that they might pay for a stadium, but they already know, because the area is developed and making money, that the chance for the state to make money is further out because you have more land to develop. If you go to Tyson's in that area, you're knocking down money to make money, right?
That's a great way to put it. They're knocking down money to make money. That doesn't make fiscal sense. Whereas you go out to Loudoun, you're creating new money and then creating new opportunity.
And then with the casino, because that's also National Harbor's site, but the MGM is right there. Chances of Dan Snyder being okay splitting money with MGM.
That's ultimately what Virginia feels is the real advantage here. So Virginia legalized casinos 2 years ago. They picked 5 locations around the state. None of the 5 were in Northern Virginia. So there's still the possibility to put a casino in Northern Virginia. If they offer that to Snyder as their contribution for the stadium, you think about what that could be worth. I mean, that could be worth $1 billion over the next 10 years. Casinos make money. I know you and I win every time we go in, but a lot of people lose in casinos.
My record in Vegas. My record in Vegas this year. It was a pretty big return.
They had to dim the lights after Cakes left, save money for a few days, bounce back. If they put a casino in Loudoun County as part of this, that stands too as a way to say, we didn't use any tax dollars. We didn't use your money, you being Virginians, you and I both Virginians. Right. We didn't use any of your money. We gave them this casino, and that was the contribution. And it's a really valuable contribution.
It is. Now, Prince William was and I talked to somebody earlier in the week or last week about this and about Prince William, because their thought was, well, the state lawmakers might look at it, well, it's between DC and Richmond, and it's off of the 95 corridor. How much do you think that will be a factor in this?
Well, it's not impossible to have a site that doesn't have metro access. And you look at the Arizona Cardinals play in the middle of nowhere, the New England Patriots play in the middle of nowhere. Like, there are NFL teams that do that, the middle of nowhere business model. I feel it would be a detrimental long-term decision. So we're talking about Office 66,
Right.
kind of in about the Manassas area. It's a tough.
So you think it'd be more Manassas than like the Woodbridge area?
You know, I not to rule out Woodbridge, because I think that certainly there are lots of plots of land in play there. I think that they are looking at anywhere they can find a big enough chunk of land.
Manassas
would and evaluate. I will say the proximity to Richmond is a real thing, and you also get Charlottesville and Norfolk. Norfolk's a very good NFL market. That's a top 10 NFL market every year. They've always been very deliberate about courting that Norfolk market. What you gain in being closer to that, you really lose commensurately on the other side in terms of, it being really tough for those fans to go. So not that they would, but, they envision this being hosting Final Fours, hosting, WrestleMania, national championship games, Taylor Swift concerts, all those things. And there are people who will go anywhere to do something, but you've been to big events. It's more fun when it's near development, near restaurants, near action. It enhances the vibe.
It does. And it's funny, because what really spelled that out for me, and first of all, going to the game, I've always believed that. When they played in Minnesota a few years ago, and that it was a Thursday, I think it was a Thursday night game, right? Was that Thursday or Monday night? I don't remember.
It was.
But regardless, it was a night game. I just remember walking to the stadium from my hotel, and you get near that area, I'm like, God, it's such a good vibe. And like, this is like, I've never felt like that going to FedEx, or like, oh, this is such a fun vibe here. Like, the fans try to make it a certain way. The team doesn't help, but there's also not enough around there to create that. And that was really like, I really would love to see that, whatever the new stadium is, whether I'm covering the team still then or not. I mean, it would, but you'd like to see that for the fans, because I just think it adds energy to everything.
No doubt. And, part of this is they want to generate their own energy through doing this, through building the restaurants, building everything around. And the Patriots do that to a large extent. They've got, the little Patriot village there around the stadium. I would expect something similar. Atlanta Braves in baseball built a new stadium hour outside of Atlanta, but it's a whole little contained village. You show up, you have dinner, you watch the game. Right. There's bars afterward. There's all that. So there's going to be action, but I think if you're talking Woodbridge, if you're talking places like that, it's a really tough sell for your Bethesda customer.
It's a tough sell for a Berryville customer, let me tell you. So, I'm not a big fan. Like, I'd rather, and I don't know if I even would want it in Loudon, even though it's closer to where I live. I've always wished they could get back down to the district. I like teams that play in the city that they're named after. But as explain to people the holdup with the RFK site.
Yeah, we don't say this enough, but thank you for prompting that, because we're saying everybody wants to be at RFK. Dan wants to be at RFK. The city wants to, the fans. Everybody knows that RFK is the best option. So you got the federal government has to sign off on it, and they've tried. You remember in the Bruce Allen years, they tried to sneak it in. I think in Trump's budget one year, tried to sneak it through. It's not for a lack of trying, but there's zero appetite for that in the federal government. And then now, as we're talking about a giant development with a casino, with other elements, that makes it even less palatable. It's pretty close to a non-starter at that level, and that's tough to see, because we all see what a great spot that is, and we all. Without diving down the rabbit hole, we all know how messed up it is that DC gets run by the federal government instead of the people who live there. So it's tough to see, but, at some point you've got to face the music. This thing ain't happening.
Because it's federal government, it's Department of Interior, and then it's the city is leasing the land, correct? So all those elements combine to make it you have to get basically three voices of support with that.
By the way, my hottest take is, so the city controls the land, I think, until like 2029 or something like that, because of the RFK lease. My hottest take is the call your bluff model, where they just build it, and in 2029 they dare them to come take it away.
Yeah, there you go. I kind of like that. Odds of it staying at FedEx in that area.
Well, in a Maryland situation, I think we all agree National Harbor is the best site in Maryland. But you mentioned it earlier. there's MGM there, there's the giant hotel there, there's the entertainment infrastructure is there, so the team is not profiting off of those ancillary elements. So the team's building a stadium and playing football there, and would do very successfully. But as we talk about live, work, play, the village concept here, the village already exists. You're joining somebody else's village. Right. That cuts into your revenue streams. FedEx obviously offers the opportunity, build from the ground up, build your own vision the whole way through. It's not as terrible as people make it sound, but at the same time, there are more Virginia fans than Maryland fans, and the Virginia fans speak with their feet. You think about Monday night games, Thursday night games. It's tough to get people from one side of the city to the other for that. It's tough for a lot of reasons.
It is. And, the funny thing is because as we know in Maryland, there are a lot there that Ravens area bleeds into Montgomery County, and there's a lot of bleeding and all that. And so they're an hour away and this team's 40 minutes away. I'll just go to this team. And because that team keeps winning, they've kind of siphoned off a lot of fans from Maryland, it seems, right?
Oh yeah, no question. As long as Lamar Jackson keeps, being amazing. Right. If you're a third grade kid going to school in Maryland, whose jersey do you want to wear to school? You want to wear the Lamar Jackson, man. He's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where it goes back to everything we talk about with the name and all that. You want to get people jazzed. It's not the stadium. It's not, game day experience and all that. People went to RFK. RFK was a dump. I mean, it was, but it was a beautiful dump, because it had charm inside. But it was not a, great stadium. It was a great atmosphere. The press box was terrible for us. I don't know if you've ever been in the press box there.
Just for Nationals baseball, I missed the Redskins years. Yeah. Yeah.
And you'd be huddled, you'd be tightly squeezed, wedged into your little area. Chris Russell would have had a hard time because he brings about 500 pieces of equipment to games. So he would have had a hard time, and it would have been fantastic. But it was, if you had a winter coat on, it was even tighter. And then the window was open. It was just not a great place to cover a game, but it was so much fun to be there. And but it stemmed from winning, and they won there, and it was, the stands bound. So you can, but man, I hope whatever they do, that they get the stadium right and that they get the place right, because you have people now making decisions who may or may not be here in a few years, but fans are going to have to live with the consequences of those decisions, good or bad.
People keep buying tickets for Lambeau Field. You get to sit on a cold metal bleacher. That's
right.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, there are some other stadiums I used to go. Listen, I grew up in Cleveland, the old municipal stadium. For people who don't remember it, go Google it and what it looked like. It was that was a bigger dump than RFK because it was 80,000 seats, but the atmosphere was good and there was some charm to it, just like RFK. So, but people went because, first of all, they were passionate. Secondly, they were, they weren't always winning, but they won enough, right? And so, that's what gets people there. And then a bad stadium becomes charming because the memories are so good. And that's what FedEx is just, the stadium stinks, the site stinks. Cook paid for it with his own money, a lot of credit there, but this is what you got. And then they didn't create their own memories. The only year where there was a lot of buzz, Michael, was the RG3 year.
Robert year. Yep. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So
that was the hail to the Redskins after the touchdown to seal that win over the Cowboys. I mean, that's an all-time. I've been to a lot of cool places, a lot of cool games. That's a top 5 for me. That place was buzzing, and they just couldn't sustain it.
No, they couldn't. And it's sad. That's where it gets back to where it's sad to see, because even watching highlights from that year, you see Robert running down the sidelines against the Vikings, and you see 80,000 people going crazy, and one guy on the sidelines wearing number 12 who's just placid as all can be, Kirk Cousins. But you know what I mean? That stadium was it used to be full. It was this place, it used to be full. And now, because of all these things that have happened, it's not. And so that's where the work remains, is whatever you do, whatever the name, they have to create memories so that you don't have to rely on the 30th anniversary of or 10 years, a 40th anniversary of the 91 team to carry the week. So, and I hope along those lines that they start retiring the numbers of guys who built this franchise.
Now that we're going down that road, it's time to step it up and
it is.
Right. Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
And there's a number of them you can go with. And, whether it's Daryl, and I know that some alumni are thinking the same thing, like, why didn't they do Daryl? Why haven't they done Riggins or Monk or they're going to have some over the hill gang guys. Say, what about Larry Brown? And whomever. There's a few that you can pick from. So I think there's a way to still connect to that past. And if they're smart this year, and I would think that they're going to do some of those this year, as a reminder that the name has changed, but the legacy and all this stuff remains. So
big year in a lot of ways.
Big week, Michael. Big week. So thanks a lot for joining me, man. And I'll see you out there on Wednesday for the big reveal. I don't know. You know what? I hope are they going to do throw up a couple of balloons and you pop one? And it's like, it's the Commanders, or there's that little tiny one that says Admirals, which it's not going to be. But
it's like those gender reveal parties that end up
right. Yeah. Yeah. You remember, there was a guy at training camp a couple of years ago who did the long snapper with Sundberg. He did the reveal that way. So, but yeah, like you said, I think we both expected to be Commanders, correct?
Yes. But I'm excited to see the logos, the uniforms, the activations, all those buzzwords around it. There's so much more than just the word itself. And Jason Wright's team has taken some lumps over the last year, and I would say many of them have been well-deserved. But I think this is still a crew with a very distinguished resume and an understanding of how important it is to get this right. I still believe they're going to get this thing across the finish line. It's going to be good.
Okay, good. And that, you're right though about the uniforms, because everybody that I've talked to who has seen them are like, because I even asked somebody earlier or last week, just I just worry if fans are going to have, it's going to be so jarring for fans. And someone's like, I saw them, like, they're really good. So that's the one thing I'm curious to see. And I think a lot, we know the name, whatever it ends up to be, the name will be received a certain way.
Sure.
And it's probably not going to be great because it's such a change.
Because you got to say it for 80 years before Correct. It becomes normal.
Right. Exactly. So it's going to be a change for that. But if you can grab them with the uniforms, the logo, then you've got a chance to at least generate some excitement for what it could be. And then the key is start developing your own damn memories. There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
I love it.
And I had to emphasize it with the damn.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's a podcast. You can do that.
There you go. And it's my podcast too. So I can do whatever I want. There you go. Well, Michael, thanks a lot. And I'll see you out there Wednesday.
All right. Take care.